Can I get a thumbs up? Awesome.
Yes, we can. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening, good
Evening.
evening. What a blessed day it is to be in 2021. If you're like me, you're anxious to let 2020 go. I know that's easier said than done, given the residuals it leaves behind. However, we are so grateful to God for blessing us with this another year, and we are thankful that we are here to talk about it and to continue to praise His wonderful name. So we are going to get started. We started last year during the pandemic with our faith panel, focus in on building shatterproof families. And I pray that many of the families who have been impacted by the different programs we've offered have really shored up their resolve. They've strengthened their families to where they can be considered shatterproof. And as we continue to do this, we want to start this new year off right. We want to start this year off talking about how to build your family legacy, building your family legacy. And when we hear the word legacy, oftentimes we think of how much money is he going to leave me? That old uncle I had, I visited him 10 years ago. He had a lot of money. Is he going to leave me anything in the will? When you hear that you've lost a loved one who seemed to have been doing pretty well, the thought might be, okay, I wonder if he remembered me. Did he leave anything for me? Did she leave anything for me? Because when you think of legacy, you think of money. You think of an inheritance that is tangible, something that you can put your hand on and use. But I want you to reimagine this word legacy. I want you to think of it deeper than money, because money comes and money goes. The dollar right now is pretty undervalued, so I want you to think beyond money and finances. I want you to think about what it is you are leaving for your children and your children's children that would be something that would last them for a lifetime. In terms of not just what you are leaving for them, but what are you leaving in them? What are you putting in them that will last for a lifetime? So that when someone looks at your great grandchild and they see a certain mannerism, or they hear something said by that child, or they see a kind behavior, they can think of, oh my goodness, that child reminds me of grandpa or grandma. They used to do she was the kindest person ever. And I can think of all the different things that she or he has done. That is a legacy that pays dividends for generations to come. So I want you to rethink about the word legacy, the term legacy, and think of it more in terms of what are you placing within your loved ones that will last them for a lifetime, even beyond money. So today we have a very distinguished panel to discuss this topic with us today. And I say distinguished because we have gone to the cream of the crop, the top of the line, when we thought about the panel for this discussion. So let me tell you who they are. We have our own Pastor Anthony Henry, who he is the host pastor, pastor of Faith Tabernacle in Trinidad. We have Pastor Joseph Griffith. Man, he is a man of wisdom. He always shares these deep, wise words and considerations with us whenever he's on the panel, or even when he is participating and contributing. And then we have, oh my goodness, Minister Clarine Cave. She came in like a bulldozer and blew us away, because she came in with some words of wisdom that just helps us to see what's possible. So these are the cream of the crop: Pastor Henry, Pastor Griffith, Minister Cave. I know that God has poured into you a vision for your ministries. I know He's poured into you some words of wisdom to share with your people this year. And we can't wait to hear what He has given you to share with us with regard building your family legacy. So I'm going to have the panelists each introduce themselves to you, just give you a little flavor of what they'll be talking about tonight, and then we will dive right in. So let's start with, I'm gonna follow Pastor Henry's lead. Ladies first. Minister Cave, you're on.
I'm going to have to invite some other ladies onto this thing when I'm on so they don't say ladies first. Good evening, everybody. It is an honor and a privilege to be here to share with you again this evening. Thank you, Dr. Neff, for your kind words. I am, again, believing that what God has so deposited into my life, I will be able to share nuggets with those who have joined us this evening. I'm looking forward to what 2020 will hold. 2021, that's right. 2021, what it has for us. And again, I am totally excited about what will happen this evening. So good evening to everybody.
Pastor Griffith?
Hi, good evening. I don't know if I can talk or speak because perhaps the doctor has mistaken this cream of the crop and all this thing, just kind of setting me up. But nonetheless, I'm here and I would contribute the best that I can. I think the subject we have this evening is a very interesting subject and it has depths. I'm quite certain we can only but touch the surface this evening. But I'm confident that when we would have left here, we would have at least begun to sow a seed that will eventually germinate. So it's good to be here. And I'm as excited as you to see where we will go. Bless you.
Pastor Henry?
Thank you, Dr. Neff, and good night, everyone. It's good to be back with you into a new year, 2021. And as the others say, we have said that we are hoping for a great night this evening from your participation. And as we share that you will interact with us. God has been good to me over the past year, and I'm looking forward to a great year this year. Great program this evening. God bless you.
All right. So let me give you some ground rules for participation. And as I do that, Pastor Henry, if you can go ahead and load up the video, I would appreciate it. So we want you to participate, which means we want to have a conversation, which involves hearing from you, you hearing from us, and you have different ways in which you can participate. You can, of course, unmute your mics and share when you're called upon. You can raise your hand. You can use any of the emojis that are available to you on the Zoom. You can definitely use the chat. We will be checking the chat as we go through the evening. We will be responding to questions and looking at the comments that you're sharing with us. So please, please, please participate so that we can all engage in this dialogue that would be most helpful to each and every one of us. Pastor Henry, you can share your screen when you're ready.
Sure.
I told my kids the other day, I said, let me explain something to y'all. If something happened to me and mama, I want you all to understand, y'all gonna be around the casket crying because I'm not leaving you everything. I'm just not. I'm gonna spend 85% of my income on me and your mama.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna leave about 5–10%. That's it. The rest of the money, me and your mama going somewhere. Dad, we can't go on vacation. No, I want to be just with your mother.
It is not what you leave to them that makes them great. It's what you leave in them. If you leave more to them than you leave in them, they will run through everything you left to them.
Yeah.
But if you leave enough in them, you don't have to leave so much to them because they can go out there and make their own way in life.
Cool. I'm glad you said that. Because now they ain't getting nothing.
Wow. Legacy. Well, let me just say this before we get started. Legacy plays the most vital of roles as the medium through which we transmit vital information to our children and their children and so on. Information such as values, traditions, wisdom that we impart to the next generation. I want you to think of legacy as spiritual and cultural DNA. Spiritual and cultural DNA that you're passing on down to your children and their children and the rest of the tribe to come. So to start us off, I am going to ask Pastor Henry. We're going to look at spiritual legacy. Pastor Henry, what does the Bible say about family legacy? What are the key components of spiritual legacy?
Dr. Neff, I think if I were to use my own personal definition of a legacy, it would be the concept of passing on traditions, wealth, and above everything else, social and spiritual values to the next generation. From a biblical perspective, whatever is passed on as a legacy should be of such value that it reaches your grandchildren if it is to be considered a legacy. So whatever you pass on, you should make sure it reaches to your grandchildren. Wiseman said, a good man leaves an inheritance to his children's children, but the sinner's wealth is laid up for the righteous. So that as far as a legacy is concerned, we should not be thinking only in terms of wealth, money, property, etc. But we should be thinking more as Christians to ensure that we pass on values, spiritual and social values. I think Moses would have had this concept when he commanded the children of Israel that they should love the Lord their God with all their heart and with all their soul and with all their might. And he says, these words that I command you today, they shall be upon your heart. You shall teach them diligently to your children and shall talk of them when you sit in your house and when you walk by the way and when you lie down and when you rise. Now, that is a concept of passing on values. But I want to say in this world, that may have worked in Moses' day. I want to say that legacy goes a bit further. Legacy goes a bit beyond teaching your children values. I would like to think that if you are going to leave a legacy, you have to live those values before your children. It is what your children would remember you as. And so it's not good enough to teach your children prudence and being very conservative and very reserved in the disbursing of wealth or money, as the case may be. And in your lifetime, you have made a series of bad investments. That would not be, the teaching is one thing, but the important thing is practicing before them, letting them see what you need, what you are living out, and being to them what you say, or walk in the talk. I think Paul would have explained that even a lot better when he brought it to us in Philippians chapter 4, verse 9. He said to the Christians here, what you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, practice these things, and the God of peace will be with you. So that as Christians, if we are thinking legacy, I think even before we think about wealth or anything like that, we should be thinking about the values that we are leaving for our children. And so if we want to think of if we are thinking of ourselves, of our children, or we want to teach our children to be kind, we need to show them what it means to be kind. We need to show them what it, how kindness is lived and what actually kindness is in our everyday walk. And so that they would remember us, not just remember us for the words that we taught them, but they would remember us for who we are, that we were a kind person, we are honest. And these are the kind of values that we would want to pass to our children. The legacy we'd want to pass to our children. So I'll pause there and let someone else probably jump in.
But Pastor Henry, I want to share a story that kind of goes along with what you just shared. Story was told of a man who wanted to teach his child, his son, about honesty. So for an entire week, every day he gave him a different lesson on honesty. At the end of the week, he decided to take his son to the movies, just as a reward, because he felt that his son really paid attention to the lesson and he learned it well. When they got to where they paid for the ticket, he told his son, "Tell them that you are 6." Because the price of a 6-year-old was much less than a 9-year-old. All of the lessons that he taught that child for an entire week went out the window by that one action.
Yes.
Because he taught the child to tell a lie when he really needed to demonstrate
That's right.
honesty.
That's right.
So I hear what you're saying. I truly believe that you have to live and express and model the behaviors that we expect to leave for our children.
Mhm.
All right, and okay, I'm going to open it up for any of the panelists or any of the participants to ask questions before Pastor Henry talks about what are some of those components. Okay, I don't see any questions as yet. So Pastor Henry, talk to us. At our last session last year, you talked a little bit about the importance of families developing their mission statement.
Mhm.
Could you please tell me what role that plays in building this legacy we're talking about?
It is important. It is important as a family that you, or an individual for that matter, if you are going to leave a legacy, you cannot wait until you get to your deathbed almost to think about the legacy that you are going to leave. It is important that in the prime of your life, that you start to think about what your life is going to be when you're on your deathbed. And so imagine that you are a great newspaper personality or great news personality. And you want to leave a legacy of being honest, being kind, being truthful. And so you need to put those into your mission. I am going to live by these values. And to do that, you need to think ahead. And so you are on your deathbed. You can see yourself. You are only 40 years of age, but you are seeing yourself on your deathbed. And you are seeing all your friends are coming to look, to give you a final look up. You can hear their voices making statements about you, and your senses, because you are so close to eternity, your senses are so keen, you can even read their thoughts. And so just imagine your son comes in and he says to you, "Oh, you were such a great father. You were such a wonderful dad." And he's saying that publicly because there are other friends there, but you're hearing in his thought, "But only if only he had allowed me to be a tailor, I might have become a great designer instead of wanting me to become a doctor." So you understand from that sort of a concept, if you can think ahead, you see exactly where you want to go. You are thinking beyond the period that you're in. And so in time, you come back to 40 years, you're now 40, and your son walks up to you and say, "Dad, I want to be a mechanic." And you had all of this good idea for him to be a doctor. And you say, "I need to change this. I need to change my attitude. I need to change the way that I am living and I am dealing with others, because legacy is not just about you. Legacy is about others, and more so about your family members. And so you have to think what you want for your family, and you need to work on that every day as a mission. And eventually, you know, you're not thinking every morning about legacy, but as you think about what you want to accomplish in life, when you get to your deathbed, you would have had a legacy.
Mhm. There's a question in the chat. Does my legacy focus solely on what matters to me?
No, I think I just answered that part, because you need to think about, you have to think about others. What are you passing on to others? What are the values you want to pass on to others? So it's not just your family members, but if you're in a church, what sort of, how do you want to be remembered? Okay, and so I use the term kindness, because religion has a way of playing on us, and we meet the rules, and so our religion may tell us to be kind, and so we are kind just because, but that person who hurts us, that person who treated us very badly, are we kind enough? Can we love enough to have our concept of kindness to be extended to that person? Can we see our spiritual strength to the place when the guy really slams into us on one cheek, we look at him and smile and say, is that all you can do? Here's the other one.
All right.
I think this is a very, very good question. Does legacy focus solely on what matters to me?
Mhm.
And I come back to the place, I think I would have mentioned this the last time I was on. There's a measuring stick that you live by. Whether you want to accept it or not, there are a set of values, a set of rules, a set of guidelines. Our compass, our measuring stick, more often than not, navigates how we live our lives, what we leave behind. If my measuring stick is God,
Yeah.
if it lines up with what the Word of God says, then I'm on track. If it skews a little bit off, then I trust God working in my life to bring me back on track.
Mhm.
So does the legacy focus solely on what matters to me? No, it focuses on what matters to God. It may sound cliche, it may sound super spiritual, but even in preparing for this, and I'm thinking, regardless of what topic may come up in these forums, because God is my measuring stick, I'm always pulled right back to the Word. I'm always pulled right back to, what does God desire of me? What does He want from me? And therefore, my legacy is not just with my own biological children. My legacy is not just with my church family, but for those who I impact on a daily basis. There's some nugget that I can leave with you. And I say this because I remember something as simple as going into the supermarket and the cashier is doing my groceries and stuff like that. And I'm holding my phone. And she says to me, "Oh, I like your phone case." I said, "Really?" She says, "Yes, I love that phone case. And purple is my favorite color." And I took off the case and I gave it to her. And she was like, she was blown away by it. "You're giving it to me?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "Will it fit your phone?" She says, "Yes, I have the same identical phone." And she was blown away by it. Now, I'm not saying this to give myself a pat on the shoulder or anything, but I'm saying that small little gesture
Right.
impacted her life in such a way that she experienced, and for my one part, I'm thinking she has experienced the love of God through my kindness to her. In receiving or asking for something, not even asking, she didn't ask, she just, expressed her admiration for something I had, and I gave it to her. For me, that is part of my legacy, because I leave a little nugget with you, regardless of who you may be, regardless of who I come in contact with. If she opens the paper tomorrow and sees that I have passed on, she will remember that there was something about this lady that impacted my life back when. And when I go through the seasons or the journey and the pages of my life, the days of my life, I like to think, how am I impacting that person?
Mhm.
How am I being a representative, an ambassador for Christ in the presence of this person? I don't have to write Jesus on my forehead,
Right.
but how am I impacting that person? So no, it's not It's not just about me and what I want, but it's about what God wants. God wants people to experience him in some way or another. They may not call him God, but when you yourself extend yourself to others, it's nothing less, nothing short of, nothing but God, because that's your measuring stick.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, now there are three parts to legacy. There are three parts to legacy. There is the giving of legacy, there's the receiving of legacy, and then there's the passing on. And, you know, as an individual, you function, you function as the person receiving and passing on. So I want to ask this question to Pastor Griffith. Pastor Griffith, how does the legacy we give shape our lives? You know, what impact does that legacy have on the choices we make? And maybe also, how does it inform the legacy that we pass on to our children?
My response to that would be, first of all, I want us to keep in context the whole discussion, this discussion that we're having this evening appears in the context of our bigger team, Shatterproof Families. And I want us to resist the temptation, I believe you can have it, because when we think about shatterproof, we might think about bulletproof. And we might think that it is a one-time kind of protection or security that is given. And I'm saying we do not want to do that. Rather, what we want to talk about is resilience. We want to put resilience in our mind, all right? And what we're suggesting is that we are existing and we live in a world in which things will come at us. And what we want to do here is we want that when we finish here, we begin to think about how we can be more resilient. That is, how can we more respond? And let me start, I'm answering your question. Let me start by saying that an experience I had. I have my little garden outside and I planted 4 cabbages. They are towards the southern side. And I cut yesterday the biggest head. So a little off, a big head, a bigger one in the middle. And as I go towards the west, I find the other cabbage ain't start heading yet. And the one a little further behind, like a baby that ain't born. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I have some peas and I picked a handful this evening or this morning, and then the fridge, but we built up to many. And I watched that tree, they're close to a guard wall, and they all bend because they were searching for the sunlight and they were bending towards the sunlight. And we discussing the issue of my garden and the cabbages. My contention is that all of them were actually in the same place, getting the same amount of food, the same, when I put the mold in that place, it was all one mold. But yet, what was happening? I'm likely to think it was the sun that did it. I'm saying that nature responds to its environment, and invariably the environment impacts us. We as human beings are very much part of the environment. And all of us, however, I discover, react quite differently to the environment in which we live. But we must also understand that the environment in which we live is one, first and foremost, one that we receive. Our parents live in it before us, and generations have lived in it before us. And what they have done, what they've created, and what they're left have created the environment in which I now live. I have a couple of choices. Either agree with those who talk about natural selection, which suggests that, my words, those who will survive are those who are best adapted to the environment. But do we become passive? Do we just say, well, I can't do nothing about it. This is what has been given to me. The environment impacts us because if my father overfish, then there can be no fish for me today. So we are invariably connected to our past, and we cannot get away from it, and it will affect us. It's also our responsibility to build upon the past and to identify these chief characteristics. Now I said enough, and I'm going to pause right there.
Yeah, Dr. Neff,
Yes.
can I just make a
Yes,
little
jump on in.
addition to that? Because
Yes.
that is so important, because you know, the legacy that we leave, we are going to inherit some of it from our parents, and until once we get to that stage in life where we can determine for ourselves what you know, we are at that stage of self-awareness. We are responsible. We are responsible, and there are things that we can take for ourselves. There are things that we can choose. We do not necessarily need to, as Pastor Griffith was saying, we don't necessarily need to allow the environment to necessarily force us into the choices that our parents have left for us. And I remembered when I was very young, my mother shared a story with me, and I think she wanted to teach us as children respect. And she shared with us that, you know, she was pressing our father's clothes one day, and my grandmother said something to her, and she stoops, and I think we understand that term. She stoops, and my grandmother, her mother, grabbed a belt, and because she was a very short woman, got on a bench and gave her a thrashing. Now, I take from that the importance of respect, but I would throw out the whole idea of disrespecting a married woman, even though that person is my child, to think about beating that child or trashing that child in front of, you know, her husband, as the case may be. So that there are things that would come down to us. We have to know what we will choose to pass on. So you don't just like, you know, suck up everything that came down, as a lot of people do, everything that came down through tradition, that you take that, especially in a context as ours, where a lot of things have come down through slavery. And there are a lot of things that we do that are not necessarily appropriate, and we would want to pass on to our children. For example, one of the problems we have in the Caribbean is our low self-esteem, which we have inherited from our foreparents. And some of them went as far as to say you must never look at an adult in the face when they're talking to you. Well, that's a clear sign that you're seeing the person to be bigger than you, better than you, and what have you. And so it's not a form of disrespect. It's a form of not knowing who you are. And so you don't want to pass that on to your children, so that we have to understand the environment in which we are, what is coming down to us, and what we are going to take and what we are going to pass on.
All right, I'm going to go to the chat. Let's see what's in the chat. Oh, here's a comment. We must also be wary of the unconscious legacy that we pass on. The ones that are not purposefully taught, but that children see us do and follow. Very well said, because children are sponges. They're observing and absorbing everything we do and say. And the old adage, our actions speak louder than our words, there's a lot of truth to that, because they are observing what we're doing and they're learning from that. And oftentimes the observed behavior is not what we want to pass on to them. And that's why, it's so important for us to model the behaviors we want to pass on as legacies to our children.
If I may come in there, Doctor,
Yes.
I do not know, we cannot separate the discussion from culture. I think they are almost one and the same thing.
Mhm.
Hence, if you understand culture, I think you already have appreciation for what legacy is all about.
Yes.
But we are already agreeing that what is important for every one of us individually is to consider how important it is to me to not to be a passive, to live a passive existence. That is the way I just fold my hand and accept. That's why I mentioned the cabbages and the tree, they respond. And again, I repeat the idea of taking the better value. But I also want to, in the same context, we are social, meaning that we invariably will interact with people. We start first with our families, and then families build societies, communities, countries, and whatever. And again, it has to do with our culture. But note carefully that in every instance there socially, we have to learn what is socially accepted.
Yes.
All right. And if we go against it, and I'm not saying that we should not go against it, because not all the things that we practice are correct. But if we go against it, we must expect a certain kind of resistance. So it means that somehow we need to be independent, we need to be sober, because we must understand the impact of us going against the vein. And we must always remember our duty of identifying the best factors. And I want to mention one other thing for a pause here. It comes back to almost the same thing. It again is about learning, our capacity to learn, to perceive, and to remember. What am I learned or have I learned about my parents' experience or those who have gone before me? What have I learned from it? Do I have the capacity to learn? If we do not have the capacity to learn, or even to perceive, or even to remember, what can we pass on? I suggest that we might have a deficit with our people. They go in school, they're learning, but they mean learning, and they can't perceive, and they can't remember nothing. Short memory. I pause.
So just to kind of put what I've heard so far in a capsule, what I'm hearing is that the legacy we are given helps to shape us in ways that are often very apparent in the way we live our lives. The values, the virtues, the traditions, the attitudes that we choose to adopt or reject, they help to shape who we become and what we become in life. And comes back to what I said in the beginning, it's our spiritual DNA and our cultural DNA that we pass on to our future generations. All right, we're going to change here to looking at health and wellness, because that's another part of our legacy that we leave for our children's children. And I'm going to ask Minister Cave to jump in and kind of tell us a little bit about how does one's approach to physical and mental health impact the future of our children's children?
Yeah, well, in preparing for this, I looked back at legacy and what that really encompasses. And it's where, when we think about legacy, we think of what will be passed on when we are gone, what will endure. And again, because my measuring stick for my household and for those who I come into contact with, my measuring stick is coming back to God. And the word teaches me that this body, my body, is a temple. It means then that I have to, when I think about it, what does that really mean? Outside of the fact that we use it a lot in Christian circles when we're talking about fornication and adultery and that kind of thing. But it also, to me, comes back to the point of, what are you putting in? What are you eating? The word of God says, he will satisfy my mouth with good things. Which means if there's good things, there are also things that are not so good.
Right.
Right? So I have to focus on, okay, he will satisfy my mouth with good things. What will work for me will not necessarily work for Pastor Griffith. What will work for Pastor Griffith might not necessarily work in terms of eating for Pastor Henry. And therefore, to be in tune and to be in step with that, I think is relatively important. It's not something that we teach our children, because obviously, when I think of households that may be under some kind of economic strain, it is going to be challenging. For example, we know in our culture, the Caribbean culture that we live in, fruits and vegetables are more expensive than buying, say, colored or processed foods. So you get a pack of chips that will cost probably $1 or so, but then the apple is going to cost $1.50 or $1.25. Why am I going to buy an apple for $1.25 when I can buy something for $1 or less than $1? So making the choices sometimes becomes a challenge. But again, coming back to the measuring stick, what are you measuring it to, right? In doing so, I looked at everything points back to God. So, for example, I'm looking at when Paul spoke to Timothy. Paul said to Timothy, I remember, I'm thinking about your faith. This is in 2 Timothy. He said, I'm remembering your faith because of your aunt Eunice. And I'm saying, to me, that was a legacy she left for him, a legacy of faith. Are we encouraging our children along that line? Are we encouraging our children to step out along that line? So in our household, physical activity is up here. I exercise, my husband exercise, my kids exercise, because it has become a part of this household's DNA. We go out together, but we also teach our children that if there's a task for you to complete, you go to college, you go to university, you go to school, and you've got PE written into your curriculum, which means that physical activity has to be some measure of importance when it comes to the structure of the world system. But what does the word tell us about exercising? What are we supposed to be doing or focusing on? And I spent some time looking at it, trying to figure out what really should we be doing. Is exercising really that important? Does it really mean that much? So I came to the point of, saying we have to be honest with our children. We have to be able to tell them, you really can't make the grade if there's something for you to do and your body can't go. If you are physically impaired, if you are health-wise and you're not able to, it's going to be challenging for you to complete the task that God has put before you. You could sing how you want. If God tells you to go to Africa and you are somehow, well, we can't go now with coronavirus has somehow impacted us in such a way. But if you are not physically or health-wise able to go, then how are you going to accomplish that task? And I thought about looking at telling the children the truth, the raw biblical truth about it. And what it comes down to is, how do you honor God with your body? How? And in Corinthians, it says, honor the Lord with your body. I think that's Corinthians 6, the ending of verse 20. It says that we should honor God with our body, right? And this includes what we eat, what we drink. If we look through the word, it's riddled with things that we can and cannot do, right? For example, the word says, do not get drunk with wine. It didn't say don't drink wine. It says, do not get drunk with wine. Now, am I to teach this to my children? Of course I am. Because if they see Daddy and I have a glass of wine, they say, but you're drinking alcohol, mommy. Yes, and therefore I have to bring them back. Again, for me, God is the center of everything. So I bring them back to scripture which says, do not get drunk with wine. It didn't say that I couldn't drink wine. Plus, for example, Timothy had stomach issues and he drank a glass of wine to be able to heal and to cure himself. So I have to teach these things to my children. This is a part of the legacy that I'm leaving, because I'm telling you about what you ingest. The Bible also tells us not to, that gluttony is a sin. So when my son has had 2 slices of cake and wants the 3rd, we go back to the word. Gluttony is a sin. And I'm teaching you that when you walk in sin, you walk away from the Lord. Do you want to overeat so that you can walk away from the Lord? So these are, I mean, I'm going to pause here for a little bit to invite questions and comments and stuff. But these are some of the things that we don't teach our children about their eating habits, about making the right choices when it comes to food, or how important is exercise. I will share a little bit on that as we go on, because it was interesting to me to find out, you know, Paul talks about running a race, right? Running a race. How can you running a race? He's equating it to running a race. We all have a race to run. But again, if you are not strong enough, if you are not fit enough, if you are not capable, because of the things that you are feeding your body, you're not looking after the temple, you can't run that race effectively. You could sing till the cows come home. Yeah. You are not going to run that race effectively. And like I said, I will pause here. I will come back and I will share a little bit more of my findings on what I believe the Holy Spirit has shared with me as I interact further this evening.
Pastor Griffith said in the comment, it can't function with a severe headache. It's difficult to function when your body is not well. You know, I know of this family, and they have a legacy, and this has been going on for generations in this family of my mind just went blank. Blood sugar problems, diabetes. And they can go back and tell you from the great grand to the grand and the current ones, how many of them died from complications of diabetes and so forth. But they have not done anything to change that within the family. They have not done anything to address that issue in the family, because even though you may be predisposed to it, there are things that you can do to be healthier and to live healthier lives, even though you have that predisposition. So I think wellness and health is a big part of the legacy we leave for families. And at some point along the family line, we need to address that and to let our children know what those issues are and how we can address those. In the chat, what we'd like to acknowledge Pastor John Yard from Hope Church in Barbados for joining us tonight. Don't want to neglect you. And please, I encourage you, feel free to chime in and share some of your words of wisdom with us as well. So, okay, does anyone else want to ask any questions or comments on the whole idea of wellness as a legacy we leave for children?
I think it's important, Dr. Neff, to understand, especially in the area where there may be some sort of a sickness or disease that follows the children, that you, as parents, you need to pass that on to your children so they can prepare for it. For example, your grandmother died from cancer, your grandmother's sister died from cancer, your mother died from cancer, and somehow the boys are escaping it. You need to tell your girl children, you need to prepare for this, because like all the ladies in the family are dying from this particular disease. So you need to be making sure you're doing your tests and what have you. So that in the formation, in the formulating, it's not just the living, the information that you are passing on is that you making sure that your children know some of the dangers that they may have to face in life because of hereditary.
Yeah, but if I may come in here, brings me into a point that I want to make. Again, I've been saying for the whole evening about the contrast between being passive and the idea of being active. All right. There is a lot that our parents have not passed on to us. There's a lot that your boss will not pass on consciously. There are a lot that some people will hold from you.
Mhm.
And what we want, where we want to be at, is to be aggressive searchers. For example, I think, and I have had my experience where I have personally begun to investigate my family. I did I'm working on my genealogy, what's it called again? The family tree. I have gone up there. I've spoken to people all through my district. I found St. Simon's, where my mother came from. I've interviewed people, and I've realized that I can almost walk through St. Simon's and there my family is. I'm saying that we today need to get up and start to dig into our families, find out where they came from, find out the struggles of your father. Here, my father, for example, saying, we come up, my father and my mother could not read. And I said to somebody, if in my search, I find that my mother was a whore, I hope that don't offend you, why should I be ashamed? I must make sure that my mother whoredom didn't meant for nothing. You understand? So I'm going to pick out the good, the effort and investment, and I'm going to carry it on. So I think it's important even then in regards to health, but that sets the principle that we need to get up and start. And I said in another place, the reason why we are suffering is somebody have not written, record, or the oral tradition has not been passed down. I wish that if I leave anything here today is let us get up and let us make sure we document, because that's the only way in our businesses. We can't plan, we can't go anywhere if we don't plan. I pause.
I'm glad you made that point, Pastor Griffith, because, you know, the Bible talks about the stewardship. You know, we've been given stewardship over our time, our talent, our tithe, and our temple. Temple, you know, Minister Cave spoke about our bodies being that temple. And as a steward over our temple, it is incumbent upon us to make sure we do everything to really take care of that temple. When I was growing up, a lot of the illnesses that were in families were kind of hidden. It was like a family secret, you know, no one talked about it. You know, as you get older or you overhear certain comments and you realize that there are health issues within the family. But in today's world where we have so much technology available to us to deal with some of these illnesses and so forth, it's important for us to pass that knowledge on to our children so they can pass it on to their children. You know, we do not want to perish because we lack knowledge. We need to make sure that we are not only knowledgeable, and I like that you're digging into your family tree and exploring and finding out more about your family, and more of us should do that so that we can then address some of these issues, and we can maybe uncover some amazing legacies that is within our families that we really never knew anything about. I want to pause here and also acknowledge Pastor O'Neill Douglin from Florida, who is here with us tonight as well. Welcome, Pastor. So glad you're here. Please feel free again to jump in and share some of your wisdom as well. All right, I'm going to open it up for everyone. Any comments, questions? that you'd like to add to the conversation? And then I'll go back around to the panelists because I know they have more to share with us tonight. So I'm just going to open it up for any of the participants to jump in and share or ask questions.
While we are waiting for a question or comment, Dr. Neff, one of the things that I probably want to inject here is that in looking at your legacy or your family legacy, what came down to you, you have to be very careful that you do not fall into the trap of determinism.
Hmm.
So that I make myself subject to what came down to me. So my father was a village ram, children all over the place. And so I have to be that.
Mhm.
You see, I can't break that because it is in me. And you know, there are a lot of people who find themselves in this situation. And so we have independent will, we have conscience, we have self-awareness, we know who we are. And we should bring these things into focus. And as I think as Stephen Covey said, whatever the stimulus may be it psychological or physiological or whatever it is, there is an opportunity before we respond, there is a space in which we can pause to make a decision. And so in that space, we can decide that we do not want to be. There are too many Christians in the church who settle and believe that the pastor has to do some praying in order to break some generational curse. I am not into the generational curse. The thing may be hereditary, and it may have been affecting you. It may have been causing you to behave in a particular way. But as an adult, you have the ability and the common sense and the understanding to know that you can do differently. Except it is some physical something, a mental strain, something like that that comes in that takes away your ability to think. I put an exception for that. But if it is where you have the ability to choose and you can make choices, you have that ability through independent will and as a Christian, through the grace of God, to break whatever curses or whatever you may call a curse to come down upon you.
All right, we have some comments in the chat. Dr. Sutherland was agreeing with Pastor Griffith, and he said, even if your mother was a woman of the night, there's a new legacy coming out of the relationship with Christ, and you can change the direction by standing on his promises. Our duty is to shape what is best for us, said Pastor Griffith. Donna Agard said, agreed, Pastor Henry, our choices matter and our children are watching how we make our decisions. Because he said that's why we have to pray against it, generation curse. So a children can go through, go through that. So keep the comments coming, put some questions in there. I'm gonna
Hey, good night, everyone.
Good evening, Pastor Yard, go ahead.
I just want to jump in here. I'm going to have
Yes.
to run away. I want to say this. I really enjoyed the conversation. And Pastor said something just now I really want to echo. And I also don't believe in the notion of generational curses. I believe with all of my heart that in Christ Jesus, we have been set free. I also believe that we have been given the opportunity to make our choices for what we want to. He made a very interesting and powerful statement. Some things are hereditary. Whether it be some sicknesses and health that passes on because of our DNA. But we ultimately have the decisions, and my mind is just taken back to the Jewish culture. They made it a habit considering every single thing to do with life. They were intentional passing on legacy. The Bible teaches us that they wrote the scriptures on the doorposts, they wore them on their garments. They oftentimes spoke that this is why that happened. This is why we do this. They instilled it over and over. And one of the things that I think, unfortunately, we have missed. And I love medieval culture. I love to look at the castles and to listen to the stories of them. And something that they did, they were ever so intentional about sharing with their family the legacy. This is why we do these things. Their banners and their coat of arms spoke strongly to identity. And I think one of the reasons, unfortunately, why, whether it be health, wealth, priorities, whatever it is, Unfortunately, I believe one of the reasons why so many of us as believers in our community, in our nations, we miss the very powerful truth of legacies because we don't know who we are, so we don't know what we pass on. It's very haphazard, it's very casual, it's unfortunately a by the way thing, and they say where we are reckless with our stewardship of our lives, or with our families, or with what we carry in the earth from God, and we will always misuse it. We will always forsake it. And so I want to say I'm really blessed and humbled to have been invited. Thank you so much, Sasha. I'm looking forward to the next one of these. I do have to run away. I just peeked in to see what was happening, but thank you for having me. I've been blessed by every single contribution I've heard tonight, and God bless you guys. I look forward to the next one.
Thank you, Pastor Yara. Thank you for your contribution.
I would come here quickly and also share one of, I guess I was fortunate to have interviewed my father a lot, and other than my experience, I still have his voice a lot, and I can still go back as a thing. But here's one that, a quote I take from him that he gave at his retirement speech. And this is it. When the shoes are upon your feet, walk on thorns and make a path for your children. And by so doing, you will make a path for yourself. That copyright.
Can't use it, huh?
No, you can use
That's
it.
good. That's good. That's good. Well said. Well said. You know, I often wonder, as a people of African descent, why we are so hesitant to share and pass on legacies and traditions and information to our children. And I don't think this used to be the case, because as a people, through oral traditions, we would talk and tell stories and share the information. But somewhere along the line, we've gotten away from that cultural tradition. And you know, I would like for us to really think about ways in which we can start to share those things with our families some more, and start having those conversations and sharing the stories. I love the stories Pastor Griffith tells of his father and different people in his family, and how much that has impacted his life. And it's something that we as a people need to get back towards doing that, because I think it's important for us to pass on that information as a form of a legacy to our families, to our children, and to their children. There's a comment, and I'll open up again. There's a comment in the chat. Damara says that regarding the point that Pastor Henry raised about determinism, says, I teach math, and you would be surprised how many parents accept or excuse their children's poor performance because they too had poor performance in math. And secondly, it would take a certain level of awareness and introspection to realize the traps, and more importantly, avoid them. Great comment. Great comment.
No, the last point there by Damar is, and it goes back to the point I try to make when I talk about the cabbages all being in the environment.
Yes.
And we cannot deny that there are certain genetic things that we inherit. Some people inherit good voices, some people good artists, etc., etc. So there's no doubt that there are some quality that we do pass on. And what becomes important, even in the idea of legacy, is how do we go about determining what ones are good, what ones ought to be preserved.
Yeah.
All right. And again, we are saying we are not supposed to be passive. We're not supposed to be passive. Prove your capacity.
All right. Georgie has his hand raised. Georgie, you want to jump in?
Yeah. With regards to not being in that place of, at least knowing and seeing your father or your parents and the things that they went through, and you of yourself, once you become that adult and make a considered effort or not effort, but to speak to yourself, hear what happened. I spoke to myself. My father was a girl's man, as they would say now. Had ladies all over the place, had children. And before I was even a Christian and before I was even married, I made this within myself saying, I am to have no children outside of West.
I do.
And God blessed me with something.
Amen.
I made that I made a promise because I was outside of wedlock and it hurt me to know that, hey, my father was there and he was not there.
Mhm.
But hear what? My grandfather was there and he spoke into my life and had me to think that, hey, where I started, I am not to finish. And I'm blessed right now.
Amen.
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 You know, I give God thanks for that. I didn't even know God when I made that, as you would say, a pact to myself. And God bless me. I'm a Christian now and I understand fully more now than then. So the things that we have to speak into our lives and we also have to speak to our children's lives.
That's right.
Brother Georgie, you did not know God, but God knew you. And he had a plan for your life. So
Exactly.
God be the glory. Amen.
Exactly.
I'm gonna circle back to Minister Cave because she has some more to share with us.
Okay, so I mean, I am totally enjoying this, and I think it is so all-encompassing to who we are as individuals. But taking the focus back again to our health, I in my thought processes just now, I was thinking, you know, there was in growing up, I used to hear all the time, "Oh, your parents can handle the liquor, man. You can handle your liquor," and that is something that I have inherited. It takes a whole lot of drinks before I could get to the point of being incapacitated enough to even think cognitively, physically, emotionally, anything. It takes a whole lot of drinks, as they say. But there was a decision that I had to make. And I remember being at a function with my husband, and we were having a glass of wine with our cocktails. And mind you, it takes a lot for me to get what they say drunk. And we were standing with another friend. She was a single lady with her boyfriend. I'm a married woman with my husband. And I remember when I left that function feeling so convicted because there I was drinking and going home with my husband, even if I got tipsy. But there she was, a single woman having to be taken home by her boyfriend. And even if she was in a state of being tipsy, because we were giggling all night and laughing and that kind of thing and having fun. But I felt so convicted that I was not being a good witness to her, that I decided at that point in time, you know what? This is it. I know I can do this, but I will not let what I do be impact someone else that they might fall. And I mean, I was in my early 20s, you know, and that stuck with me. Because I can handle it doesn't mean that somebody else can.
Right.
Similarly, those are things I think we need to teach our children. How are you impacting on someone else? So going back to the health point, I'm looking at Proverbs 31:17, which says, to the point where it says, you know, exercising, for example, building strength as you exercise. It says, she sets about her work vigorously. Her arms are strong for her task. I don't think I need to say any more concerning that. You know, your arms, you can't do the work you're supposed to do if you don't have the physical ability to do it. And there's an ad that usually comes over on the radio that says, a body that is active remains active. And we know that as we age, we become less active. We become, you know, all the aches and the pains. But the more active you remain, the more that body submits to the activity that you're involved in. So there's the Bible also says in 1 Timothy, it talks about physical training. Physical training is of some value. We don't I'm probably repeating myself so much. We don't tell our children these things. Your brain needs to function, go to physical education. When they get to the age of teenage years, if your child is not actively involved in sports, girls don't want to play sports because you're going to get sweaty. And so we have to be able to teach them, if you want to have some form of longevity, you need to exercise now, build the foundation now. And then there's running with perseverance, the race that is set before you. I said that earlier. And how can you do this if you are ailing? What kind of witness are you being? If you're out and you're overeating, if you are not looking after the temple, if you're not carrying yourself in such a way that spells that you are doing that which is good to maintain that which God has entrusted to you, because you are a temple. It means that you're not your own, right? God has given you this body the same way God gives you the finances, and you have to be a good steward of that. It's the same way that he has given you your body, to be a good steward of that. It houses the Holy Spirit. It is where you function. And again, I said it and I keep saying it. I always come back to what the word has to say about a particular topic. My being who I am is centered on who God is. And if his word tells me there's some value in training, he will satisfy my mouth with good things. He will, he has set a table before me. He has, he is, he's asking me not to get drunk with wine. He's saying everything in moderation. No, it doesn't mean you over-exercise. It doesn't mean you under-exercise. Everything in moderation. And that's one of the things that I teach. Everything in moderation. So in closing off, again, being a good steward of what God has entrusted into your care. And your body is a part of that. Being able to pass that on to your children. I heard it said earlier that we're not documenting, and I agree with you, Pastor Griffith. We are not documenting enough. We are not, my children, my older children, because for those of you who don't know, I have 2 springs, 3 who are over 20 and 2 who are now 11 and 10, right? But with the older children, we have always included them in the things that we knew about our parents. So if there is diabetes on my mom's end, my mom died at 68. She died of heart failure. And I'm saying, no, I ain't going out like that. Her mom, which is my grandmother, died when my mom was 10. So there was no information that my mom had that was passed down to her about how her mom died. So I have to do the work so that my children will know what they're challenged with. So I'm saying this to my children. You need to watch what you eat. You need to do this. You need to do that. I can only tell you they're adults now and they're making decisions for themselves. But the foundation has been laid, right? The foundation is there. And we are in a position where we're not taking the time to document because we are distracted.
Yeah.
We are distracted by the world and the happenings of the world. The word of God says, do not conform to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. We are not taking the time to renew. We're not taking the time to have these kind of discourses so that we can go back to the drawing board and say, you know what, I haven't looked into my family history. Maybe I need to know that, because coming off of this discussion, even if it was that I didn't participate, being there to hear, I need to go and look back at my family line and see what's going on. What do I need to let my children know of now? But we're distracted because it's better to sit down and watch Netflix, and don't mind me, I'm not knocking Netflix, but it is better for us to sit down and watch Netflix than to sit down in a forum like this. So we are not taking the time. We are too distracted by the happenings of the world, and the world is swallowing us up. one individual at a time. Because there's such a thin line and we keep towing the line all the time, towing the line. So I'm just saying, as a part of our legacy, as a part of making sure that we have strong families and we go forth, all of this is a part of it. Knowing your family history, being able to say to your children, well, you know what? We don't do this because this is what has been in our family for eons. So my kids see me exercise and they go like, Mommy, why you always running? You always exercise. Why you always running? You just want to look good? No. That happens to be a byproduct of it. And I used to say, you don't know how I am fighting these genes. And I'm fighting these genes because of you. But I no longer say that. I have overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of my testimony. So therefore, I am not fighting genes. I am building a legacy. I am leaving you an example for you to follow. Not because it ain't about all the looking pretty, which is, I mean, that's just icing on the cake. But at the same time, I want you to eat the things you're supposed to eat. So when I put the vegetables on there, we ain't having that kind of discourse that you're not eating your vegetables, because somewhere down your line, you're making sure that a couple years from now, you can stand and do the work that God has called you to do. This, to me, is all part of our legacy, building it as we go along.
Wonderful. Thank you. A lot of discussion in the chat, comments. There's one comment I want to, let's see. Where is it? Exercise and great legacy to leave for our kids. But I want to kind of zero back and ask Pastor Henry to say something about the financial legacy. I don't want to, even though I mentioned in the beginning that it's oftentimes what we think of when we talk about legacy. I don't want to discount it, because it's important for us to also leave that part of an inheritance to our children. And that becomes part of our legacy, not the main part or the only part, but it should be part of our legacy. So Pastor Henry, you want to share something about financial legacy?
Yeah, I think I agree with Steve Harvey, though, that if you sow the values and you teach them how to make wealth, then you probably can use most of what you have for yourselves. But it's my way of thinking that every generation should improve on what has come down to you. So if you got 5 cents, at least build on that to pass on a little bit more than 5 cents to your children. And that takes education. It doesn't just take going out there to work. It takes education. It takes development in what you do, mastering your gifts and your talents, and coming to recognize what your gifts and your talents are. Because a lot of people remain poor today because their natural gifts, they are not employing their natural gifts, right? And I always refer to that guy who was on the America Got Talent, who was washing cars and had the voice of a very good singer, and is now making records. So that you need to teach your children to explore their natural gifts and talents, because that is what will create wealth for them. And that is what they can use to carry on, to pass on to their children and to their grandchildren.
Now, at the beginning of this segment, we showed a very short video clip, and I'm going to ask Pastor Henry to cue that up again, because most of you didn't see it. I think it's important for us all to see again. And while he does that, I'm going to ask the panelists to get their final thoughts together, so that after the video, Minister Cave and Pastor Griffith, Pastor Henry, be ready to give your final thoughts. Okay.
So you not just need to give me a few minutes.
Okay. All right. Well, okay. Let's do some of the final thoughts, and then we'll show that short video at the end. Pastor Griffith, you ready?
Well, you must appreciate or forgive me if I go back to speak about my father, because you're talking about legacy.
Yes.
He told a story of an old man years ago. He helped around the old hospital area. He had dirtied himself, you know what I mean, incontinence. My father took him behind the hospital and he cleaned him. The old man offered my father, only thing he had was some biscuits. My father couldn't take the biscuits, but my father went into his pocket and gave him what little he had. The man had explained how it was only he and his wife left, and he was the stronger of the two, but he comes out to carry home something for the old lady. The old man looks to my father, and the old man says, "Sonny," I almost quoting, "may God bless you. And what you don't get, may your children get." I listened to my father rehearsing that to me, and I heard him actually saying, I can see that old man's blessing has passed on and it's upon you. The other thing I said earlier, he said about his parents not leaving anything. But he says this. He says, as he was in his later age, he said, remember he said his mother said, "Joe, keep what you got, because I ain't left anything for you because I don't like the woman you marry." On the contrary, my father said, "Look, I got a few cents there. If I give it to you or to one, I'm going to hoard it out. But here," he says to me, take it, my words, and build on it." He says, "and take care of your sisters." I go back, he says, and it's quotation from the retirement, "And when the shoes are upon your feet, walk on thorns and thistles, and make a way for your children, and by so doing, you make a path for yourself." Have been a good evening. God bless you.
Yes, I have it now, Dr. Neff.
All right.
I told my kids the other day, I said, let me explain something to y'all. If something happened to me and mama, I want you all to understand, y'all gonna be around the casket crying because I'm not leaving you everything. I'm just not. I'm gonna spend 85% of my income on me and your mama.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm gonna leave about 5–10%. That's it. The rest of the money, me and your mama going somewhere. Dad, we can't go on vacation. No, I want to be just with your mother.
It is not what you leave to them that makes them great. It's what you leave in them. If you leave more to them than you leave in them, they will run through everything you left to them.
Yeah.
But if you leave enough in them, you don't have to leave so much to them because they can go out there and make their own way in life.
Cool. I'm glad you said that, because now they ain't getting nothing.
I don't know how you guys feel about that, but he sure said a whole lot.
It's hilarious.
It is hilarious. But I like what Pastor Bishop Jake said. It's what you leave in them, because,
That's
you know,
right.
they can go out and make their own. But if you leave nothing in them, there's nothing to make it with. There's nothing to, according to Pastor Griffith, to build on. You have to leave them something to build on. And when you place something within them, you lay a strong foundation on which they can then build. Minister Cave, your closing thoughts?
My thoughts go back to how we teach our children. Psalm 78 talks about, we will not hide. I'll read it here for you. I'll read from verse 3. Psalm 78, verse 3 and 4. Well, from verse 3, from verse 2. "I will open my mouth with a parable. I will utter hidden things from of old, things we have heard and known, things our ancestors have told us." Verse 4, which is where my focus went. "We will not hide them from their descendants." We will tell the next generation, in that we will tell our children the praiseworthy deeds of the Lord, his power and the wonder he has done. We don't take the time to share with our children how God has worked in our lives. We focus so much on the now. So for example, I have this habit of saying to my now 11-year-old son, when he asks for something, he always thinks mommy and daddy provides it. I take his focus off us. We didn't provide it. God provided it. You may have a request. Okay, so what do you want to get for your birthday? What would you like to have? Oh, mommy, I would like this or I would like that. But when you get it, I want you to see God, not see mommy and daddy. Because then anytime when you are grown and you're looking for something, you're going to look to someone else to provide it. If you know that God is your provider, if you know that God is your sustainer, then you don't have to look anywhere else. You know this. You and I go off to work every day, but we don't see our employers as the ones who pay us or who have given us the resources we need to live our daily lives, because we work as unto God. If you work as unto God when you go into the work environment, you're not looking for your boss to pay you. And I remember saying this to someone, my boss can't pay me. He can't. God is the one who pays me. God gives him what this company needs to be able to get resources to me so that I can maintain my life, because he says he will give me what pertains to life and godliness. So I'm saying this as we go on. Teach our children God. Teach them what he has done. The word instructs us to do that, to teach our children what he has done. Tell them the truth. Show them how he has worked in your life. Let your testimony, don't let them hear your testimony when you share it with somebody else and they happen to hear. Or when there's testimony day at church or whatever, share it with them. Oh, we were having these struggles before and this, but look how God came through for us. And the final thing is that what you make happen for someone else, God will make happen for you. Those are my closing.
Thank you, Minister Faith. Pastor Henry, you're going to have the final word.
God is good. What a wonderful subject. Hope that we will put seriousness to the thought at the beginning of the year. And so instead of thinking about resolutions, we will think about legacy. Resolutions are just but for a period of time and what we are going to seek to achieve. But if we can think of what we are going to leave for our families, I think we're going to work towards something. It's nice to see Dr. Samuel with us, and the Lord bless you, Pastor Samuel. There was one question in the chat about the two issues that the whole idea of the legacy and the inheritance.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the thing is that the inheritance, or what you inheritance, is the legacy that is passed to you. But you have to make sure that you have your legacy. You cannot depend on what has been passed to you, that is what is going to your children. And I think that is probably why the wise one may have said that a good man leaves a legacy for his grandchildren, because the children would have already, you would have taught them, like T.D. Jakes, you would have put so much in them that they can formulate a life for themselves. And so what they leave, they would leave for their grandchildren. And I usually interpret that to mean if you have a legacy, if you establish a legacy, you should make sure that go to your grandchildren. So it's not good enough for your children to accept the gospel and be saved if your legacy is to see your children to be saved. It is important that it impacts what you have passed on to your children, impact your children so much that they will teach their children. At least it would get to another generation. And so thank you very much. Our subject next week, God's willing, will be time management. And I know a lot of us have issues with that. We have some very good panelists who will be sharing with us. And so not next week, 2 weeks. So today's the 5th, the 12th, the 19th. On the 19th of January, we have some great panelists who will be sharing with us on the subject of time management. And we trust that you will be with us. And unlike tonight, where we have gone 2 minutes over time, they will definitely finish at 9 o'clock. So thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for being with us. Your last word, Dr. Neff.
Thank you all for being with us again tonight. It's always a pleasure to dialogue with you, and I look forward to participating in the future sessions. Invite your friends, invite your colleagues, invite your church members, because the information that we're sharing is so valuable, and it helps to build us all up as we continue this journey in life. Thank you so much, and God bless you all.
Lord bless you all. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you, and same to you. Good night,
Yeah.
everybody.
God bless. Have a good night. Bye.
Good night.
Pastor Samuel.
Good night. Clarice.
Good night, Dr. Sutherland.
Pastor Henry, there were so many suggestions coming out of tonight's session.
They didn't. Good night, Ruth Jones. You mean from the chat or?
Not just the chat. I have some people messaging me privately.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, when we're down to, I'll send it to you guys.
Okay, great. I still have a few last night. One.
Yeah. Didn't realize Dr. Neff left already.
Yes, probably something was there with her early. Yeah, she left. She left. Yeah.
There's something that I've programmed I did like tonight.
Okay.
So, well, let's chat later on, Dr. Sutherland,
Yeah.
probably on WhatsApp.
Okay.
And I'm going to close up the program now.
Will do. Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.